Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. There's a lot of cattle mutilation cases out there where a lot of people claim to have seen UFOs flying around a pasture or something, and then the next thing you know, there's a cow that's mutilated, or a horse sometimes. Different kinds of animals, but mostly cattle. But it's very rare where somebody actually sees this going down. But there is a case here that I want to talk about from 1973, the Doherty abduction case that happened in Houston, Texas. And here's an article. Well, you could find this. You could do a search online for this, read about it. But here was something that I found on a website called Mysterious World, and I will leave the link for it here. But anyway, I'm going to read what it says here about it. It says, one of the few encounter cases which also involved animal mutilation occurred in May 1973 and involved 4 women. Judy Doherty, her daughter Cindy, Judy's mother and sister-in-law, would have the most terrifying experience of their lives. After playing bingo in Houston, the 4 women were returning to Judy's hometown of Texas City, but first going by Alto Loma to drop off Judy's sister and brother-in-law. After dropping off the 2 in Alto Loma, the remaining 4 saw a strange light, which seemed to be hovering in the night sky. The sight was intriguing enough that the 4 women stopped and got out of the car to get a clearer look at the source of the light. They watched in awe until the light disappeared. They then resumed their trip to Texas City. Eventually, Judy began to suffer from extreme headaches and anxiety. After being seen and dismissed by several doctors, she was referred to well-known ufologist and hypnotist Dr. Leo Sprinkle. Sprinkle's previous experience with the UFO enigma led him to recommend hypnosis as a way to relieve Judy of her emotional trauma. There can be little doubt that Sprinkle suspected an abduction from the beginning. Under hypnosis, it was revealed that Judy had apparently been abducted aboard an extraterrestrial spacecraft. Judy went on in detail, describing how a cow was taken up into the craft and methodically mutilated by 2 small entities. During the hypnotic regression, Judy described the unusual sensation of being in 2 places at once. She said that she was still standing beside her car after they stopped to watch the strange light in the sky. However, Judy also said that at the same time she was in a strange chamber watching the gruesome experiment unfolding before her eyes. Footage of this regression was included in Linda Moulton Howe's award-winning documentary Strange Harvest, which was a 1980 documentary that appeared on HBO with cattle mutilation expert and UFO researcher Linda Moulton Howe. And so if you can get a hold of that movie, it's really hard to watch that, to get a copy of that. I wish I had one. But anyway, the article continues here. It says, in a 1989 interview on 21st Century Radio, Linda Howe divulged what had been learned from the experience of Judy Doherty. Judy described, in a pale beam of yellow light, a small brown and white calf being taken up into a craft. Then, in an extraordinary way, Judy was inside the craft as she watches the calf have pieces of it excised: the tongue, the sex organs, the eyes. Some of Sprinkle's hypnosis session is included below. Sprinkle asks, "Is there anyone around you?" There was this long, almost 45-second pause, and then she said, 2 little men. The 2 beings were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, gray creatures with large egg-shaped heads. It's like a spotlight shining down on the back of my car, and it's like it has substance to it. I can see an animal being taken up in this. I can see it squirming and trying to get free, and it's like it's being sucked up. She then went on to mention seeing her daughter Cindy on an operating table. They don't listen. They just ignore me, go about their work as if it's nothing. They don't seem to have any emotions. They don't seem to care. They just take some samples from her. It would be a number of years later when Judy's daughter Cindy would also undergo regressive hypnosis. Her session only corroborated her mother's. So the article goes on. There was another statement where Doherty talked about this in 2003. That she says, I'll read some of it here. She says, "First, I must say there is no doubt that abductions exist. My abduction took place in 1973. There were 16 eyewitnesses to the craft, though not all remember an abduction. My daughter, who was 14 at the time, and myself. That was first reported to Ellington Air Force Base in Texas, who denied anything was on the radar at the time. Our abduction was also returning from a bingo game in Houston to our home in Texas City, first going to Alta Loma to drop off sister and brother-in-law. There was another sighting of 3 people coming from a bingo game in Houston that got burned by the effects of the sighting. Our sighting was almost a year before theirs. So much happened that night, I would not attempt to go into detail. We were all changed and have never been the same since. We were first ridiculed by so much by others who were not present, most family mostly. I did not talk about it for a few years. Then my husband returned home from Vietnam and we were stationed in Yuma, Arizona. She somehow heard about APRO, which is a UFO citizens UFO investigation organization. She says, I called them and told them about my sighting, and the very next day, Mr. Doherty and his wife and a doctor who had experience in hypnosis named Rose Tennant came to my house and spent the entire day going over what happened. Dr. Tennant regressed me and a few details came out, or shall I say surfaced. I had been having terrible migraines and just the amount of surfacing relieved much. I remembered a formula that was given to me by the small gray alien. I think that it was I think that is what caused a lot of problems. I did not say anything to anyone else, as I was still gun-shy and afraid of ridicule. A few years later, I got a call from a lady named Linda Howe. We talked a long time, her trying to convince me I needed to be regressed again for a TV documentary she was doing called Strange Harvest. She apparently had some problems. I guess there was some kind of miscommunication or something between her and Howe, and she ended up not trusting Howe for whatever reason, and she didn't trust Dr. Sprinkle either. I guess she felt that they were just, using her for their own purposes, which I guess happens sometimes in these situations with UFO investigators. I guess they pay. Once they get something out of somebody, information, and they just want to move on, and they don't want to be focused on the same old case. But anyhow, just think about that. Not only was this woman abducted along with her daughter. Now, apparently, these other 2 people they weren't abducted. That was there. But see, that's the whole thing. Like, these beings have the ability to basically, wipe out your memory, like wipe out your conscious mind in an instant. I mean, basically, there's other reports. I remember, I've read lots of things about alien abduction over the years, and in some cases, somebody. If there's certain people that the aliens are abducting on a regular basis and there's other people around, those people get turned off like a light, switching off a light. And then the other people are, abducted, and, the aliens do what they're doing to them and then return them. And nobody there, not even the abductees or the people that were, around that person, none of them remember anything. It's just an incredible technology to be able to do something like that. That just goes to show how far advanced these things are. But I mean, this happened in 1973, and again, it looked like it was a few years before she realized what happened. She felt weird and she had problems. After after that incident happened, this woman had problems. Migraine, headaches, other kinds of issues. What some people believe, like Dr. David Jacobs, David Jacobs, PhD, who wrote The Threat, he believes like that. What's happening is that the aliens have some kind of ability to make memories. Instead of memories that should be in your short-term memory bank, they somehow have the ability to throw them somehow deep. Regress them deep into your long-term memory. So that's why after these things happen, you're not thinking about it because it's stuffed way back in your long-term memory. And a lot of think about your long-term memory. You just don't. A lot of things that happened years ago, you don't remember. Apparently all these things are there. If you were to get hypnotized, I mean, you could remember the most menial things. The things that really don't make a difference. If you were to get hypnotized, to when you're a kid, say you're a 40-year-old person, you got hypnotized to when you're the day of your birthday, the day you turned 10. Like, I don't remember that day. I don't remember hardly anything from that day. But if under hypnosis, a lot of things might come back. Would probably come back because those memories are stored in your mind somewhere. And that's apparently what's happening with a lot of alien abductees. When the thing happens, they don't remember because these memories somehow get stuffed back into that long-term memory where you just you're not thinking about it, and you actually forget consciously of it. It's just very strange. But this woman, actually, not only that, she saw a cow getting mutilated while she was getting abducted. And it was another strange aspect of this case is that she felt like she was, under hypnosis, when she was remembering this, she felt like she was in two places at the same time. She was basically standing at her car looking at the light, and meanwhile she was actually in the craft getting manipulated by these alien beings along with her daughter. And meanwhile, some of them had a calf, and they were mutilating the calf right in front of her. So, but you wonder, like, how come she had this double memory? It could be that this is what they were trying to make her think was going on, that she was still at her car looking up at the light, and really that's not what was happening. That was the memory they were trying to convince her what was going on. But what was actually going on was that she was seeing all of this insanity unfold, this abduction, the events of the abduction unfold. Of course, she didn't remember this after they left. I mean, she didn't remember anything until years later, until she got hypnotized. But it's just very, very interesting. It's very strange. It's scary. It's scary, the ability that these things have. I know that I had an experience when I was a kid with an alien in my room. There was definitely no question in my mind that when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old, there was some sort of a being in my room that had 3 fingers on its hand. That's all I remember. I never was hypnotized. I don't know if I was ever abducted that night or other times, and I just don't recall. But I do know that there was something in my room that night that was not human. And you wonder how many people. I mean, that was the only thing I remember. I don't have any kind of other. Like, say, if I was someone that was getting abducted my whole life, I have no idea if it's true or not. I really don't. Now, and I'm sure there's some people out there that, there's some people out there most likely that, maybe they didn't even have an experience like I did, where I was able to see, one time, that one moment in time, a 20-minute episode where there was something in my room, and then the next day I woke up and I have no idea like what happened. Like, something could have happened. I just don't recall. If I got hypnotized, maybe I'd remember, but I don't really see the point in getting hypnotized now. I don't know if I want to remember. But the whole point is, what I'm trying to make here is that there could be a lot of people out there that have no idea that this has ever happened in their life, or have any suspicion whatsoever, because this technology or this ability, whatever these beings are able to do to make you forget, it's beyond anything. It's beyond anything known in our science. Obviously, I mean, apparently it's not a drug. Unless it's some drug that we have no idea that's, undetectable in the blood afterward. Who knows? It's just if you're a million years or a billion years more advanced, I mean, they will have. Who knows what they're capable of doing? Anything, things that we can't even dream of. But and it makes you wonder though too. Why, this is a case though, this case regarding this Doherty, she saw a cow getting mutilated. Like, what was the purpose of that? Why did this have to happen? What was the purpose of having a human being, and what's the purpose of their mutilating these cows? And then, that's something that's happening, all the time for decades now. These cows getting surgically mutilated, eyeballs removed with surgical precision, organs removed, anus cored out. What's the purpose? And they keep doing it. You would think, okay, after a few times, if it was just for simple study, after a few times, you think they would know what they're doing. But this keeps happening. It's been happening and happening and happening. Nobody knows how many cases. I mean, and it's not just cows. It could be wild animals in the woods. I mean, could be a deer. I mean, there's the first really big case was a horse back in the late '60s. It was a horse that got mutilated like this under very strange circumstances. Yeah, there's a lot of questions, no answers. But one thing is clear: it's real. This is really happening. There's beings on this planet, and they're doing these kinds of things.